We're on.
Good morning and welcome to the fourth 2022 ConeX Portal LinkedIn Live session. I'm quite excited this morning to introduce our special guest, John Roberts of Automation Consultancy Services. John's an independent robotics and automation expert with over 20 years experience in multiple sectors, which enables him to bring new ideas and perspectives to your project. We're also joined today by Peter Francis of Map Limited. Peter was one of our guest speakers a few months ago. Glad to see you've recovered from it, Peter. And the man that is a LinkedIn legend, Mr. Good News himself, the amazing Mark Weymouth of Plus Automation. As usual, my partner in crime, without whom we wouldn't be able to do these LinkedIn Lives, is the inimitable Mr. Adam Payne of Factory IQ. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
John, I have to say I was thrilled when Sam asked me to host this particular ConeX session. As most people know, robots is one of my favourite subjects. But I also know it's an area many manufacturers haven't dipped their toes into yet.
Yes.
So is it right to say that those who do will be looking at it as a quick fix substitute for cheap labour and expect to be able to source an off-the-shelf robot?
Yes, definitely. That's I think I said in our introduction that the most common misconception in the industry is that when I'm talking about people that have not done it before, if you've done it before, you've been through the experience, you know what you're doing. But if you're doing it for the first time, I think the assumption is that you're buying a ready product. If you think about it in terms of a production line, a piece of equipment, you go to a supplier, a vendor, you give them a rough idea of what you're looking to do. They deliver a solution, you pay for it, it goes in and it works. That's typically how it works on product-based sales. But a robotic system, a custom robotic system is a different thing altogether. What typically happens is the business wants to look at automation, wants to take out people from the line, or they can't get people to fulfill the shifts, so they want to automate. So they do an internet search, they find a few perhaps local vendors, they call in salespeople, the salespeople visit, they have a look at the line, they walk around for an hour, take some video, take a few photographs, they go away and they prepare a quotation. 3 quotations come back to the business and the business picks one of them and places the order. And everyone thinks, great, that's it. The thing's built, it's designed, tested, delivered, put on site, and it starts to work. That's when the problems usually start to occur. What happens is, in that hour window that the salesman got, all he saw was a brief snapshot of production. So he saw what was happening at that particular moment, on that particular line, on that particular product. But the customer assumes that the vendor knows all about their production and all about their products, and it's all assumption, and yeah, they'll deal with it. It's the vendor's problem, they'll solve our problem for us. What happens is the machine works, but it only works on the products and the speeds and the specification that is detailed in the vendor's quotation. So if there's anything that's missed or forgotten, or we forgot about that product, or this one is slightly different to that one, or there's a tolerance issue or something like that, you typically find that the machine won't work properly. The robotic system won't work properly. Best case scenario is it doesn't quite meet the productivity numbers that you want. Worst case scenario is it's a catastrophic failure and it doesn't work. The reason why I set up this business, after being in sales for about 15 years, I visited multiple. I was one of the sales guys knocking on the door and supplying the quotations, 15 years in sales. And I visited hundreds of factories over that time, and pretty much, not all of them, but a great deal of them had a machine in the corner with a sheet over it. And when you ask what that was, they go, we bought that and it didn't work very well. And if you scratched at the surface and asked them why, it was always the same reason. And that was that they'd not properly worked together on a specification. There'd been assumption, there'd been, they'll deal with it. It's all okay. Don't worry about it. Let's just get on with it. And they'd not followed a proper process. And this is the key thing, a process to deliver a piece of custom automation. I try and sum it up by saying if you think about, if you're buying yourself, if you're a gentleman and you're buying yourself a custom-made suit, you go and visit a tailor. You give the tailor all your requirements, all the fabric, all your sizing, all what you like, exactly what you want, and what you get back is a custom-made suit. Now, the other way to look at it, or what typically happens is, you give what the businesses are doing, are giving the tailor a picture of themselves from 100 yards away, and not telling them anything about what they want. So when the suit arrives, it doesn't fit very well. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's a great analogy, John. Peter, I saw you nodding your head there. I guess you experienced something similar.
I come at it from a more engineering bias, but I fully agree with what John's saying. Is that the customers don't necessarily they don't identify what it is they want to do. They don't actually understand their processes very well. How, if they don't understand it, how on earth will the vendor be able to understand it? Because they're the ones who are they're the expert in the equipment, and the customer is the expert in his process.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think people think that robotics are going to be a catch-all to everything, but you're missing out an awful lot of things, which is understand your process, understand your people, and then you can actually bring the robotics in to suit what works. So I'm fully with you there, John. It is a nightmare, and people have gone down the wrong route too many times.
If you rely entirely on the vendor to deliver what you want, match your process, match your production, you're pretty much guaranteed to fail in some shape or other. It'll be a small failure, or it'll be a catastrophic failure. Either way, the customer pays, because the vendor delivers their quotation, you sign that quotation, they build a machine to match that quotation, and that's it. If then other specification arrives after the fact, it's what's called a change order, which you guys will be familiar with, and that's chargeable to the customer, so that the vendor can modify the machine and make the changes. But if you've already invested a great deal of money into a decent piece of equipment, then to add in another huge chunk of cash to modify it to do all the things that you want, it kind of kills the whole project. And it's a simple thing to fix. It really is. Follow a process, build a specification, take the time to do a specification, not a technical one, a functional specification, what it should do, how fast it should go, what it should do it on, its working environment, things like that. And then give that document to vendors to provide quotations from. And that document then also is used throughout the process, the design process, the sign-off process, the SAT and FAT, the testing process and delivery at the end. And you tie it all together, and it de-risks the whole process for the client.
You've got an important point there, John, about making that specification right. And I think what some people do is they take an idealized view of what the process that they're trying to replace with a machine. Mm-hmm. One of the things I think they don't realize is that the humans that have been doing that for however many years understand the process much better than the theoretical, and they're actually doing things that no one knows about to make the product work. That doesn't get picked up. So the theoretical sequence of actions actually is far more complex than anyone realizes. So I think it's really important that when a customer specifies what they want, they've got to involve the people whose jobs they're making simpler.
Can I jump in here? I'm going to play devil's advocate now, because I like playing devil's advocate. So I'm an SME. I've got this process. I don't know anything about standardization. I don't know anything about looking at my process and document it. I don't know what specifications out there and what I need. So where does it lie? So how do we bridge that gap? Because if I have a business, as we are, we've set up the businesses, we create our processes, and we have a process. I won't say we will create our process, and generally they have been built up and they're not streamlined or whatever. The business owner doesn't know and is not interested around that. He's got a process, he's got somebody there, but he now wants to automate it. but doesn't know that he needs to standardize that process and build this specification, doesn't know how to do that. So as Yinch has just put in here, is that you've got to, it's this like you need this process doctor, as Yinch has just made a comment on, diagnosing and prescribing what is actually required. So that becomes from like the vendor side of experience, leading the customer side down around that, ascertaining and saying, you know, well, we need to do this. We need to understand, I don't know, what product's going through there, how you pick, how you place it up, how it's handled off, how you pick and place, and you know, and do an audit of the process to build this specification for it. Because some business owners don't know, because they're potentially they're working in the business. If an SME, you could be working in the business. So I think there's a has to be a balance with it around it, because I've seen where, you know, businesses have been sold a pup, and both, you've got the full spectrum on this, is that some have actually taken advantage of the customer and others, you know, haven't. So there's a balance for me, because some businesses don't know.
Absolutely, but that's my point, Adam. When you're buying a product, you buy, let's say, I don't know, a check weighing machine for weighing a product. You've got multiple vendors to buy it from. They're all of a standard specification, and you pick your supplier and you choose the one that you like best, because that product already exists, so it's already defined as a piece of equipment. But a custom piece of automation doesn't exist. It's a blank piece of paper. So this is the point. The whole point of this discussion is that I think the industry doesn't realise that they're not buying a custom piece of automation. They think they're buying a product, and so they expect the vendor to deliver on their requirement, because they don't understand the process and what's required to successfully deliver it. I mean, I've been, as a sales guy, I've literally traced engineering managers around factories at sort of almost running pace, and they're on the phone every 30 seconds. And I'm asking him to give me a full specification for this solution. I'm thinking, no way on earth is this guy ever gonna deliver this. He just simply doesn't have the time. And a lot of people also don't really understand what's required and how to do it.
It's an interesting point. Mark, can I bring you in? Because I saw you nodding just now. I guess you've probably experienced similar.
Yeah, I fully agree with the guys. I sit on the side, so to speak. Plus Automation is a sensor business, and we particularly work with the system integrators, the people, the consultants in between the robot vendor and the end user. The robots, particularly with the advent of cobots, the industry is guilty of some terrible over-promising, under-understanding, if such a word exists. The sales guys don't have the knowledge, the ability, or really the interest to listen to the customer. As Adam said, often the customer isn't able to succinctly say what they want, because they may not know what they want. And I really strongly advocate for system integrators or consultants like them to produce what the customer needs. And that's key element of that, is getting the knowledge out of the customer. And we see it. We have very intelligent conversations with system integrators about the best sensor to make something work. We also go into factories where we see robots covered in dust because Nirvana was promised and Nirvana wasn't paid for and Nirvana wasn't delivered. So
Yes.
have some real skepticism about the robot industry at the minute, and some real concerns about safety. There's a lot of inappropriately installations going on that aren't really having the safety guarding, safety light curtains, the level of thought that should be happening. And I think this will leave a bad taste in a lot of manufacturers, and particularly SMEs. They may take that leap to robotics. It doesn't work. It maybe isn't safe enough. It will really, I think, spoil the agenda potentially. Absolutely. If they go alone and take in this promised cobot that doesn't give them what they want.
Mark, what you're describing though, if you were to write a specific, what I'm talking about is a URS, a user requirement specification document. It comes from the pharmaceutical sector and aerospace sectors, that sort of thing. So it's a defined, a functional specification of what the system should do, and in there should be guarding systems, safety systems. There should be no room for misunderstanding or assumption. It should be clearly defined in your document that you give to that vendor. And that takes out all the risk from the customer and passes it on to the vendor. The vendor has to deliver to your requirements. So all this, as we've talked about guarding, we've talked about safety, it should be clearly defined what you expect it to be like, and they have to prove it.
I agree. I think my observation is the robot providers, particularly of smaller robots, don't offer that service. The SMEs don't tend to have that expertise. So yeah, I advocate for people like yourself to bring that intelligence and consultancy into the process.
Yeah, and provide the whole plan to achieve what you can buy, because each individual vendor doesn't necessarily have the skills to be able to embrace all of the tasks that need to be done to deliver the design of the robot to meet that process and install it on the factory floor in a safe manner that's going to work with all the people around it.
John, sorry, very quickly, because you spoke around at this document you had there. I forgot. It went in.
URS.
I've forgotten the acronym. Yeah,
user requirement specification.
Right, is that something that can be downloaded readily? Sort of like
you can buy it. You can get templates.
Can you?
If you start looking.
Is that something that you have and you can?
Yeah, it's something I do. I do that. I work directly with clients and provide that on a. I do a small variant for budgetary purposes. So I would go in and have a look at the requirement, the process. I document that in like a small variant, and then we push it out to vendors for budgetary prices, cost to send, check an idea, and then if the idea looks like it's going to go, then I do a full big URS document which captures everything, all the functional and all the safety systems, as Mark mentioned, that sort of thing. That then goes out to the chosen vendors with the right proven experience in that sector, in the client sector, and then we get prices back and we go on from there.
Okay. If you got, no, I'm going to actually put you on the spot here, and I don't know whether you have, but if you've got a link to a document like that, obviously on your website or anything like that, is it worthwhile putting a link in the comments afterwards so people have got access to it? Because I'm with Mark here, and businesses, SMEs, particularly SMEs, need a system integrator.
I certainly have a template I could do. I could show. It'd have to be the blank version because all the ones. Yeah. Most of my clients I have signed up NDA, so I can't share live stuff.
But it'd give an indication of sort of like the stuff that you should really look at. We should have.
And I
could do a document with bullet points, which showed all the things you should consider, and this is what should be in your document. But again, it goes right back to the start. You're not buying a product; you're buying a bespoke piece of equipment. This is why you must do this document. Otherwise, you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important because there are an awful lot of things to be considered. As Mark mentioned, things like Guardian. One of the things that I was quite surprised at when I was dealing with installing robots was floor strength. I mean, that never even occurred to me, that the floor needs to be strong enough to take some of these bigger robots.
Yeah, I'm working on one at the moment, and the product itself is 450 kilograms. So you can imagine the size of the robot and then all the supporting equipment to hold that robot to the floor. It's absolutely important.
Exactly.
Because otherwise it'll just go.
When that robot's swinging itself around.
Yeah, with a 450 kilogram payload and the gripper moving itself around, we don't want that to fall over.
No, or decide to go flying off its pedestal.
Imagine.
One thing we keep talking about is robots which are moving things physically, which I think most people can relate to. That it's taking mechanical operations away from humans and put it into possibly a safer, more reliable approach.
Yes.
Something that's been over the last few years become a little bit more sort of included as part of the robotics scene is actually the inspection and some of the detection of what information we can get, because humans who are looking at products on a process line, they're looking at certain things and they're not necessarily using exactly the same thresholds every time, whereas with robotics you can do that. And I was thinking that actually something where Mark is probably a little bit more in the field, where you're looking for data and information about products to be able to take action and make those decisions, whereas instead of processing it from pick and place and putting from one place to another, you're actually making decisions instead now.
Yeah, robotics should really be used where in functions that are either dangerous or very repetitive, or you want true traceability. And certainly we have systems that are used to give absolutely cast iron traceability on inspections used on aircraft wings, for example. So it's robots, a person could do it, but you want an absolutely perfect IT auditable trail to say that wing was tested. We get on that plane, hopefully at some point in the future on a summer holiday. So it's a classic example of using robotics to get precision and reliability.
But Peter, vision systems are used loads in the food sector before the robotics. If you're thinking about high-speed pick and place, picking up a food item, typically that vision system is looking at that product, and then it's doing a pass and fail criteria and sending that data to that robot, and it either picks it or it doesn't. So it's pretty standard stuff.
Yeah, and you can do that at speed, can't you?
Extremely high speed, yeah.
I think sometimes people associate robotics as the mechanical arm that moves things around, but actually it expands much wider than that, in taking those vision systems and the detection into all part of the same integration.
Yeah, there's 3D vision systems now. You can see things on top of it, like a pile, and you can pick one off the top and then work your way down through the pile. I saw one on sausages the other day. It was a mass of sausages coming down the line, and the robot was taking a sausage off the top. It was really quite impressive.
I've seen them now where they can pick up the pivot point of a person's arm. So the vision, so the movement of the arm as they're doing, the vision system is watching that movement as well.
That's one of the things that I found fascinating. I think it was at Subcon last year, and they actually had a robot arm. Again, like you said, it had the pivot points, and it was actually, it had got a dropper, and it was taking liquid from one vessel and moving it across and dropping it into a test tube. And it was actually pivoting the wrist part and the elbow part as it carried out the function. It was just fascinating.
Yeah, this because you get that, but I've seen this on the human side as well, where it's watching the vision system's watching the human.
Yeah.
Wow. It's and it's you getting it's quite. I mean, we used to. I mean, God, 1995. I think Bob Gibbon will tell you this, because it was when we worked with Bob Gibbon, we did a fully autonomous cell, like a Chaku line, so there was no human integration with it, and there was a vision system in making a bolt. And you used to actually find if that needed to rework, and it would actually put it back into rework the bolt as well.
1995.
Yeah. Very 90s, yeah. Now, don't tell you, it was a pain in the arse, like.
Yeah, but you can do that then. Imagine what you can do now.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just the stuff that you can do now is just phenomenal. But I always come back is having that systems integrator. Sorry, Mark.
I think the big difference now is it's affordable. You can afford to do these things on small batches. Yeah. We are talking now, it's accessible to the SME as opposed to the automotive world 20 years ago.
Yeah,
that's right. And the other thing as well is that there are stocks of second-hand robots available for manufacturers to buy. It doesn't have to be brand new, but again, this is where you need somebody like John to be able to come in and look at what the requirements are and whether anything available on the second-hand market would suit those requirements. But I think even what we've been talking about with the robots that pivot and what have you, again, it all comes down to actually tailoring that for the specific jobs that robot needs to do.
Yeah, in a document.
Definitely.
How can you define when you have a pick and place, for instance, a pallet stacking system? How can you define the best operation that's going to take it from one place to another, maybe with inspection on the way?
Depends on the application. What do you mean, sort of like end of line case packing, or what?
Yeah, because if you've got a product which you want to stack onto a pallet, okay, the robot will provide will be programmed with the stacking pattern. But how do you actually program the route and the method in a way that actually enables people to see the best approach rather than how a human would do it, which is just pick it up.
It's a mixture usually of the cases, the environment, the available space, and the budget really that the client wants to spend. The actual packing, the stacking of a pallet pattern would be the same done by a robot as it is by a person. That pallet pattern is predefined, and the robot will just match it. But if you're asking about how do you deliver a robotic system to best match the requirement of the client, that depends how many lines, how fast the lines are running, what the difference is between the two the different product types, the gripper types, and the available space.
Yeah, we used to pick it absolutely, John, because we used to pick up on things like the tack time that you needed. I mean, most of us here have been in the automotive first tier. From a tack time point of view, depending on that, as you say, you're mirroring something, but you might be getting down to analysation of the air movements between the ropes. So, like Angela was saying, it was the articulation of the hand. Well, you do it one way, but you might need to take like half a second out of it, or a tenth of a second, whatever it is, and you actually start looking at these air movements that are happening. So when they haven't actually got the piece, or when they've got the piece, to make it quicker. There's a whole host of stuff that goes into that. A whole host of stuff. We used to have a number of technicians just constantly looking at the programs and where they could take, just this little small elements, increments out of the time.
And who's responsible for optimizing that? Would that be the vendor or the client, or is it a collaboration between the two?
I would say it's likely a collab. If this is afterwards, if we're like trying to refine it and improve it or increase the efficiency, surely that would be better done before the thing goes in at testing phase. So that would be just the vendor. If you're sort of like, if you've been running it for a good few years and you've got a new product and you've got something else you want to add to that system, then it's a collaboration between the client and the vendor.
Okay.
Brilliant. I think we've had a few comments, haven't we, Adam?
We have, yeah. I was just going to say, did you want to? I know I think I'm trying to have a look now. Steve Murphy mentioned Elon Musk didn't quite understand automation, obviously with the Tesla side, because he had to bring in more humans in the assembly side, if I remember rightly, a few years back. Yinch, it does take a process doctor to diagnose and prescribe what's required. Automation can be the answer, but has to be personalised, a tailored, customised approach, which I think we've all been saying. What else was there? Where's Mr. Murphy? He's agreed with everything on that. He was talking about the Japanese seem to have it a lot clearer and understanding of what's actually required when they look at those sort of things. But I suppose they're far more probably advanced than a lot of people on the robotic side. Lee. Where was Lee's? As Yinch say, Lee Howarth, as Yinch says, diagnose. You must first find all the problems first before you can provide a solution, which I suppose is what John was saying.
Yep,
absolutely.
Very true.
Fantastic. I think Stephen made a valid point about being able to identify what we can do with robots, and I think there is at the moment a little bit of a gap between what the vendor's understanding of what the robots can do and what the SMEs realise that they can do, because we as an SME can demand the world, but actually not get very far, and the vendors can also offer the world, but if the two are not in parallel, you're just never going to make it. So I think if there's some way of either having a dialogue or having an intermediary that does do that, and I think we've got one in the room here, that intermediary to go between the vendor and the client to identify what can the robot and the automation do, as well as what does the client actually need to achieve. I think you can get a happy medium.
I don't think I could have summed it up any better myself, Peter. Thank you. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. That has been fascinating conversation. Thank you, John, and I really hope that it's been useful as well to manufacturers who are perhaps looking at automation in the future. Like to thank obviously all our guests, Adam, Mark, Peter and John, for joining us. Thank you to those of you who commented. It was a bit of lively chat going on there, which is always good. If you'd like to know more about ConeX Portable, ConeX Portal, or as we were referred to by Mark Bond yesterday, the ConeXers. You want to know more about ConeX Portal, how it's working with SMEs in UK manufacturing. If you want to get involved, then please contact Sam Bainham or myself. Always happy to have a chat with you, and look forward to seeing you all again for our next LinkedIn Live. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.